The K9 had no business being in the hospital. Bomb dogs never do. But just after midnight, chaos erupted when a German shepherd tore away from its handler and bolted through the ER doors, weaving past abandoned gurneys, sidestepping medical carts, ignoring equipment scattered across the floor, making a beeline straight for a young nurse frozen at the medication station. The dog locked eyes with her, dropped into position. Alerted. Every conversation died mid-sentence. Security hands flew to holsters. Doctors stumbled backward. Someone's voice cut through the silence, sharp and panicked. Get away from her. The nurse didn't bolt, didn't cry out, didn't even flinch. Her badge read Kira Bennett, 28 years old. Rookie, night shift. The kind of person who faded into the background of a busy hospital exactly the way she wanted it. The handler stood paralyzed 10 feet away, staring at his dog like it had lost its mind. This doesn't make any sense, he breathed. She's not carrying anything. That was exactly the problem. Because the K9 wasn't alerting to a bomb, it was alerting to something far more dangerous, something that shouldn't exist anymore, something buried 3 years ago in a desert halfway around the world. And as federal systems began silently lighting up in the background, St. Catherine Hospital came to a chilling realization. The danger wasn't what Kira carried, it was who she was. The first sound wasn't barking, it was silence. A sudden suffocating quiet that swept through the emergency department just after midnight, like the building itself had drawn breath and forgotten how to let go. Kira felt it before anyone else, not because she was special, but because she'd learned long ago to watch the small things, the pauses, the gaps, those fragile moments right before everything breaks. She stood at the medication cart, head bent, dark blonde hair pulled into a tight, practical knot, scanning a chart with the bone-deep focus of someone 15 hours into a double shift. Rookie nurse. That's what her badge said. That's what everyone believed. New, quiet, competent enough to fade into the background. Exactly what she needed. Then the doors opened. Not the automatic ER entrance where ambulances rolled in with sirens wailing. The secured side door near imaging. The one reserved for law enforcement and specialized units. Boots struck tile in sharp rhythm. Radios crackled low. A ripple of unease rolled through the room as heads turned. Bomb squad. 2 handlers in dark tactical uniforms entered first. Spines rigid, eyes already dissecting the space with the cold efficiency of men who'd seen what explosives could do to human bodies. Between them surged a large German shepherd, every muscle coiled tight, nose working overtime. A bomb-sniffing K9. The kind you only see when something has already gone catastrophically wrong. Someone near the waiting room whispered, "Why is there a K9 unit here?" Kira didn't look up. Not yet. She felt the shift in the air, the way trained operators move when seconds matter. She'd felt it before years ago in places she'd buried deep enough to almost forget. The lead handler, a man in his mid-30s with the build of someone who still ran 5 miles every morning, issued a quiet command. The K9 surged forward, methodically scanning gurneys, trash bins, backpacks, abandoned under chairs. Standard procedure. Controlled. Professional. Then the dog froze. Its head jerked up, ears forward, and without warning, it shattered protocol. The leash tore from the handler's grip as the K9 launched forward across the polished floor. Not toward a bag, not toward equipment, not toward the crowded waiting room, straight at Kira. Someone shouted, a nurse screamed. A gurney crashed sideways as someone shoved it clear. The K9 closed the distance in heartbeats, claws scrabbling on tile, eyes locked with laser focus on the young woman who hadn't moved an inch. Kira finally looked up. She didn't step back, didn't raise her hands, didn't run. The dog stopped inches from her chest, sat, alerted. The world fractured around that single moment. Security hands flew to holsters. A doctor stumbled backward, knocking over a tray of instruments that clattered across the floor like broken glass. The handler froze mid-stride, his face draining to ash as he stared at his dog in complete disbelief. No, he breathed. That's impossible. Every instinct in the room screamed threat. Someone shouted again, louder this time, more panicked. Get away from her now, another voice cut through. Clear the area, everyone back. Kira stood motionless, heart rate steady at 62 beats per minute, eyes on the K9. She recognized the posture, the tension in its shoulders, the way its ears twitched as if recalibrating. This wasn't aggression, this was recognition. The handler moved closer, his voice strangled with confusion. Ma'am, I need you to step back slowly. Kira didn't move. Her voice came out calm, measured with the kind of control that only made people more nervous. If you think it's a bomb, she said evenly, you're already looking in the wrong place. That stopped him cold. The K9 didn't disengage. It leaned in slightly, nose hovering near her torso, then sat again harder this time. A textbook alert, the kind that doesn't lie. The ER erupted into controlled chaos. Patients were wheeled back behind curtains. Fabric snapped as privacy screens were yanked into place. A security officer keyed his radio with trembling fingers, his voice tight. "We have a situation in the ER. Need federal response. Now." Overhead, a lockdown alarm began to pulse. Low, ominous, unmistakable. Kira felt the weight of 100 eyes now. Suspicion, fear, confusion swirling into something darker. She'd become the eye of a storm she hadn't summoned, the very thing she'd spent 3 years avoiding. The handler swallowed hard, glancing at his team. "She's not carrying anything," he said. "No bag, no device, nothing." "That dog is never wrong," another officer replied flatly. His hand rested on his sidearm. Kira glanced down at her scrubs. Empty pockets, badge, pen, gloves tucked into her waistband. Nothing that should trigger this kind of response. The problem wasn't what she carried. The problem was what the dog remembered, what it had been trained to detect in places most Americans would never see. "Ma'am," the handler tried again, softer now, but no less urgent. "Have you recently been near explosives, military surplus construction sites?" Kira met his eyes directly. The kind of eye contact that made people uncomfortable because it didn't waver. "Not recently." The canine's tail twitched once, a small tell that only someone with the right training would catch. Someone near the nurse's station hissed to a colleague, "What if she's a plant? What if she's been planning something?" Another voice answered, uncertain, "She's just a nurse. She started 3 months ago. Background check cleared." Kira almost smiled at that. Almost. Security tightened the perimeter. 2 officers positioned themselves between Kira and the rest of the ER, weapons lowered, but ready. The chief resident, a young woman named Dr. Elaine Hartford, with tired eyes and coffee-stained scrubs, approached with her hands raised in careful placation. "Kira," she said gently, "we just need to understand what's happening here." "I understand," Kira replied without looking at her. "You're scared. That's not—" Hartford started. "You should be," Kira said, turning to meet her gaze. "But not of me." The handler crouched beside his dog, fingers brushing its collar, grounding it. "Buddy," he murmured, "what are you picking up?" The canine whined softly, not anxious, intensely focused. Kira exhaled slowly through her nose and spoke without looking at anyone directly. "You trained him overseas." The handler's head snapped up. "What desert environment?" she continued quietly. "High heat, high explosives. Improvised compounds mixed with chemicals that don't register on standard sensors." The handler stared at her like she'd just spoken a language only he understood. "How would you possibly know that?" Kira finally looked down at the dog. Her voice dropped just enough that only the handler and a few nearby could hear. "Easy, hero," she said. "You're doing good." The canine relaxed, just a fraction, but enough. The handler went absolutely still. "That phrase," he said slowly, That's not standard civilian handling." The room leaned in without realizing it, everyone waiting for an explanation that made sense, for the world to click back into place. Kira straightened. "Your dog isn't alerting to a device," she said. "He's alerting to residue. Residue of what someone demanded." She hesitated. This was the edge, the precipice she'd balanced on for 3 years. One wrong word, and everything she'd built, every careful lie, every quiet night shift would collapse. "Something I survived," she said finally. The alarm tone shifted, louder now, more urgent. Overhead lights flickered as the hospital's emergency protocols escalated to the next level. Lockdown complete. All exterior doors sealed. No one in, no one out. A security officer's radio crackled hard, cutting through the tension like a blade. Federal notification triggered. I repeat, federal notification triggered. ETA 10 minutes. That was new. That was bad. The handler rose slowly, eyes never leaving Kira's face. "My dog was trained with one unit," he said carefully. "One very specific unit. Overseas." Kira felt the old weight settle behind her ribs, the familiar terror of being seen too clearly. "That unit was wiped out," he continued, his voice dropping. "Declared KIA. No survivors." The canine looked up at her, ears forward, tail perfectly still. Kira said nothing. The chief resident's voice cracked. "What is he talking about?" Before anyone could answer, the canine rose and pressed its head briefly against Kira's leg. "Not an alert, not aggression, acknowledgement." The handler's voice shook. "That dog only does that with handlers he recognizes, people he's worked with in the field." Security weapons lowered just slightly, fear shifted into something worse. Confusion mixed with dawning horror. Kira closed her eyes for half a second. When she opened them, her expression was calm but somehow older than it had been minutes before, as if a mask had slipped just enough to reveal something beneath, something harder, something that had seen things these people couldn't imagine. "You should call whoever trained you," she said quietly. "Tell them the system just woke up." The handler stared. "Who are you?" Kira looked around the ER, at the patients pressed against walls, at the staff frozen in place, at the people who needed her to be exactly who she'd pretended to be for 3 long years. "I'm the nurse on duty," she said, "and right now you need to let me do my job." A pause stretched thin as wire. Then from somewhere deep in the hospital, a new sound sliced through the tension. A sharp, urgent alarm, different from the lockdown tone. Medical, immediate, unmistakable. A monitor was flatlining. Kira turned toward the sound without waiting for permission. "That's trauma too," she said. "He doesn't have time for whatever this is." The handler hesitated, his training warring with common sense. The canine looked between them, then back to Kira as if asking for direction. "Stand down," the handler ordered finally. For now, the dog obeyed but didn't move far. It stayed close to Kira's side as she stepped forward, hands already pulling on fresh gloves, focus snapping back into razor-sharp clarity. Behind her, a security officer whispered urgently into his radio. "We need her name run through every database we have. Military, federal, everything." Another voice replied, barely audible but sharp with confusion. "There's nothing to run. She doesn't exist before 2 years ago. It's like she appeared out of nowhere." Kira pushed through the trauma bay doors as alarms screamed overhead. Her hands moved with practiced precision, checking airway reading monitors, scanning skin tone, making split-second decisions faster than any chart could track. But she could feel it. The shift she couldn't undo. The crack in the carefully constructed wall she'd built around herself. The canine watched her go, eyes tracking every movement with the intensity of a dog that remembered, that knew. And somewhere far beyond the hospital walls and darkened rooms with encrypted communications and classified clearances, a system that had been dormant for 3 years registered an impossible signal. A ghost had just come back to life. The first person to follow Kira into trauma 2 wasn't a doctor. It was the dog. The K9 slipped past the threshold just as Kira reached the bedside, nails clicking softly on linoleum body, low and controlled. The handler started to protest, then stopped when he saw Kira's hands already moving with the kind of speed and precision that spoke of something far beyond nursing school training. The patient was crashing. Middle-aged male, blunt force trauma from a vehicle accident, oxygen plummeting, blood pressure unstable, the kind of case that devoured hesitation and spit out corpses. BP's dropping, a resident said, voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Prep for intubation." Another voice, younger, less certain. "Do we have central line access?" Kira didn't look up. "Not yet," she said. That earned several sharp looks. A nurse didn't overrule doctors. Not ever. She leaned in, eyes narrowing as she studied the man's chest movement. Too shallow. Too irregular. His skin had the wrong color, the wrong texture. The monitor beeped faster, numbers dropping into dangerous territory. Kira adjusted the angle of his head with gentle precision, pressed 2 fingers just below his ribline, and felt it. Internal pressure building where it had no business being. Air trapped. Lung collapsed. "Collapsed lung," she said. "Left side. He's compensating, but he won't hold." The resident frowned, glancing at the attending physician who just rushed in. "We need imaging first." Kira shook her head once. "Definitive. We need air out now." The resident's face flushed. "Kira, you're a nurse. We have protocols. He has 90 seconds. Kira cut in, her voice calm but absolute. "You want to argue, do it after he's breathing." That tone, that measured final certainty, it shifted the entire room. The attending, a graying man who'd seen enough emergencies to recognize competence when it walked through the door, made a decision in less than a heartbeat. "Someone hand her the kit," he said. Kira moved with practiced precision. Needle in, pressure released. A sharp hiss of air escaped from where it had been slowly suffocating the man from the inside. The patient's oxygen climbed. Color returned to his lips. The monitor's frantic beeping slowed to something survivable. The room exhaled in unison. A resident whispered, "How did she—" Later, the attending snapped, already moving to stabilize. "Good call, Bennett." Kira didn't respond. She was already adjusting lines, checking vitals, holding everything steady until the numbers settled into something that meant life instead of death. Behind her, the handler watched in silence. The K9 didn't move. didn't break focus, didn't relax. That should have been impossible. A bomb dog trained to detect explosives had no reason to fixate on a nurse performing emergency medicine, unless she wasn't just a nurse. When the immediate danger passed and the patient was stable enough for transport to ICU, the room buzzed with low, urgent voices. Medical staff exchanging glances, questions forming, none of them spoken aloud yet. Kira stepped back, stripping her gloves with hands that trembled just slightly now that the adrenaline was crashing. She turned and nearly collided with the handler who'd moved closer without her noticing. "You didn't even glance at the chart," he said quietly. Kira met his gaze. "The body tells the truth faster than paperwork. That dog hasn't taken his eyes off you," he said. "Not once since we walked in." Kira glanced down. The canine's ears flicked forward tail, still waiting for something only it understood. "What's his name?" she asked. "Rex." Kira nodded slowly. "He's a good boy." The handler swallowed. He was trained to detect compounds used in IEDs, not just explosives. Residuals, the kind that cling to skin-bone bloodstream, things that don't wash off easily, things that stay with you for years. Kira's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, a micro-expression that someone without training would miss entirely. "He's alerting to something he shouldn't be smelling here," the handler continued. "Something that doesn't belong in a civilian hospital." Before Kira could answer, security radios exploded with overlapping chatter. Voices layered over one another, urgent and clipped. "Federal agents en route." "Who authorized that automatic escalation?" "System flagged it." ETA 5 minutes. Kira felt the weight drop fully into place. The quiet life she'd built over 3 careful years. Night shifts, routine, chaos-blessed anonymity was cracking down the middle like ice over deep water. The handler leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You didn't just trigger my dog," he said. "You triggered a network. Federal systems don't light up like this for nothing." Kira looked past him through the trauma bay windows back toward the ER where patients waited and staff whispered. The dog sat when she paused, perfectly synced to her movement, as if they'd worked together for years. "You should pull him back," she said softly. "This isn't his fight." Rex didn't budge. The handler's voice dropped even lower. "He only refuses direct commands when he recognizes a handler. Someone he trusts more than me." Kira closed her eyes for a fraction of a second, just long enough to make a decision she'd been avoiding for 3 years. The conference room lights were too bright, fluorescent, unforgiving. The kind of lighting that made everyone look tired and exposed. Kira sat at the table, hands folded, posture relaxed in a way that made everyone else deeply uncomfortable. Across from her sat hospital administration, 3 people in business, casual, who looked like they'd been pulled from their homes. Security stood by the door, hands resting near weapons. And 2 people who hadn't bothered with introductions. Dark suits, no badges visible, no hospital credentials. The kind of people who didn't need to announce their authority because everyone could feel it in the room. Rex lay at Kira's feet, head resting on his paws, eyes half closed but entirely alert. No one had managed to make him leave. The handler stood nearby, torn between loyalty to his dog and disbelief at everything unfolding. "This is a medical facility," the hospital director said carefully. "We need to understand why a bomb detection dog is alerting on one of our nurses." One of the suited individuals spoke, a woman in her early 40s with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who'd spent decades learning to read people. Her voice was flat, professional, empty of inflection. "We're past that question." Kira didn't look at her. "You've been flagged," the other added. A man slightly older with the kind of stillness that suggested he'd seen combat. "Your biometric data triggered a dormant identifier in federal systems." Kira raised an eyebrow. "That's impressive considering I don't exist." The room went completely still. The handler shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, Kira, what are they talking about?" Kira glanced at him. "They're talking about paperwork." The suited woman leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Your name, Kira Bennett, returns nothing before nursing school. No childhood records, no prior employment, no social security history before 2 years ago. Nothing." "That's not illegal," Kira replied calmly. "No," the woman agreed. "It's impossible. People don't just appear out of nowhere." The hospital director looked between them, utterly lost. She passed every background check. State licensing, federal database clearance, everything. "Because they were civilian checks," the man in the suit said. "This isn't civilian." Kira finally looked at them directly. "You're here because a dog remembered something you buried." The woman smiled thinly. "We're here because you resurfaced." Rex shifted, pressing closer to Kira's leg. A protective gesture that didn't go unnoticed. You were declared KEE. The man continued, pulling a tablet from his jacket and sliding it across the table. Afghanistan. Classified operation. Entire unit lost. The handler sucked in a sharp breath. That's not, Kira cut a glance at him. He went quiet immediately, something in her eyes silencing him more effectively than words ever could. You weren't supposed to survive, the woman said. And even if you did, you weren't supposed to stay active. You were supposed to disappear. Kira's voice remained steady. I'm a nurse. You were a Navy SEAL combat medic, the man corrected, reading from the tablet. Sergeant Kira Ashford. 37 confirmed kills. Hundreds of saves. Your squad was erased because of what they knew. You were erased with them. The hospital director stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. This is outrageous. You can't just come in here and... No, Kira said calmly, cutting her off. This is inconvenient. Silence pressed down like a physical weight. Heavy, suffocating. A security officer poked his head into the room, his face pale. We have media outside. Rumors are spreading fast. Something about a bomb threat and a suspect in custody. The woman in the suit stood smoothly. Then we should move quickly. Kira didn't move. You're not taking me, the man frowned. You don't have a choice. Kira's gaze flicked to Rex. The dog lifted its head, ears forward, reading her body language with the precision of a partner who'd worked alongside operators in life-or-death situations. You already lost control, Kira said quietly. The moment you let a canine remember me. The handler looked between them, realization dawning across his face like a slow sunrise. You trained with dogs? Kira nodded once. And they don't forget. An alarm sounded faintly through the wall. Different from the lockdown tone, different from the trauma alert. This one was sharp, urgent, the kind that meant someone was dying right now. Kira stood instantly. That's ICU, she said. That's not my patient, but it's my problem. The woman moved to block her path. We're not finished. Kira met her eyes. People are dying. Are we really going to debate jurisdiction while someone flatlines? Something in her tone and the absolute certainty of someone who'd made this choice 1,000 times before shifted the balance in the room. The woman hesitated. Just long enough. Kira stepped past her, Rex rising in perfect sync, and walked toward the door. The handler followed, caught between duty and instinct, his hand resting on his sidearm, but not drawing. In the ICU, a young woman lay seizing on the bed monitors, screaming in digital panic. Nurses surrounded her, hands moving in choreographed chaos, but nothing was working. No medical history, no warning signs, just sudden catastrophic system failure. Kira absorbed the scene in seconds. The angle of the patient's body, the specific pattern of muscle contractions, the readings on the monitor that didn't match any standard neurological event. This isn't neurological, she said, her voice cutting through the noise. It's exposure. The ICU nurse, a veteran with 20 years of experience, shook her head. Exposure to what? Kira didn't answer. She was already moving, already calculating. Rex growled softly beside her. Low. Warning. That was when Kira understood. Seal the vents, she ordered. Now. Why? Someone shouted. Because whatever Rex smelled on me, Kira said, turning to face the federal agents who'd followed her, is in this building. The suited woman appeared in the doorway, eyes sharp and calculating. That's not possible. Kira looked back at her. Neither am I. The seizure slowed, then stopped. The patient sagged against the bed, breathing shallow but alive. Rex sat the alert, clear and unmistakable. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitors returning to normal rhythms. The woman in the suit spoke quietly, all pretense of bureaucratic calm gone. If this spreads, it already has, Kira replied, stripping her gloves with deliberate care. You just didn't notice. Sirens wailed in the distance. Growing closer, more federal response. More questions, more complications. Kira leaned against the counter, exhaustion finally cutting through the adrenaline that had been holding her upright for the past hour. She closed her eyes for just a beat, gathering what strength remained. You should have left me buried, she said softly, not opening her eyes. The woman didn't deny it. As security moved to lock down the ICU, as federal agents flooded the building with their protocols and procedures, Kira felt the past tightening around her again. Not as memory this time, as consequence. And somewhere deep in encrypted systems that most people didn't know existed, something else was waking up. Something that had been waiting 3 years for a signal it never expected to receive. A ghost had been found. And ghosts, as everyone knows, always bring unfinished business with them. The hospital went into full lockdown at 1:46 a.m. Steel doors slid into place with a sound that had no business in a building meant for healing. Elevators froze mid-climb, trapping 3 nurses and a janitor between floors. The overhead announcement was calm, almost polite, which somehow made it worse. All personnel, please shelter in place. This is not a drill. Remain in your current location until further notice. Staff were ordered to stay put. Patients were told nothing at all, left to wonder why armed federal agents now walk the corridors with the grim efficiency of soldiers entering hostile territory. Kira stood in the hallway outside ICU, hands braced on the counter, breathing slow and deliberate. The kind of controlled breathing they teach you when panic is a luxury you can't afford. Rex sat at her side, body aligned with hers like a shadow that understood exactly where to fall. Across from them, Agent Victoria Sterling spoke quietly into an earpiece, her face carved from stone. Mid-40s, Kira estimated. Former military, judging by the way she moved. Probably Army intelligence based on the questions she asked. The kind of person who'd spent a career learning to see through lies. This isn't a civilian situation anymore, Sterling said into the earpiece. We have internal confirmation of chemical residue. Unknown origin, unknown deployment method. Recommend full hazmat protocol. Kira didn't look at her. You always do. Sterling's eyes flicked to her. Always do what overreact, Kira replied. Turn a medical emergency into a federal incident. It's what you're trained for. The handler, whose name Kira had learned, was Officer Trent Blackwood, hovered several steps back. Torn between loyalty to his dog and disbelief at the woman the dog refused to abandon. He was younger than she'd first thought. 36 maybe? Still had that edge of certainty that came from never having seen a mission go truly sideways. If there's a chemical agent, he said carefully, we need to know what kind, what we're dealing with. Kira straightened, vertebrae cracking softly. You don't, she replied. You need to know how it moves. That drew sharp attention from everyone within earshot. Explain, Sterling said. Kira's eyes tracked the ceiling vents, the air returns, the HVAC system that no one ever thought about until it was too late. It binds low, she said. Not airborne in the usual sense. It rides surfaces, skin, fabric. It's designed to be carried without detection. Sterling went rigid. That compound was never approved for deployment. Kira finally turned to face her. Neither was the mission. Silence spread like a held breath. Down the hall, a nurse sprinted past, professional composure cracking at the edges. Another ICU patient just crashed, she shouted to no one in particular. Same symptoms. Respiratory distress, seizures, no known cause. That was the moment Blackwood understood. His gaze snapped to Kira, pieces falling into place with the heavy click of a magazine locking into a weapon. It's not a bomb dog alert, he said slowly. It's a trail. He's tracking the source. Kira nodded once, or the echo of it. Rex's ears lifted. He stood nose low, moving away from Kira for the first time since entering the ER. The handler reached for the leash on instinct, then stopped himself. The dog wasn't breaking command. He was following it. Following something only he could smell, something his training had burned into neural pathways 3 years ago in a place most Americans would never see on a map. They moved fast through sealed corridors, doors opening with security clearances Kira didn't ask about. The hospital felt different now. Too quiet. Like a place after evacuation when the living have fled and only ghosts remain. Machines beeped behind closed doors. Somewhere a baby cried, the sound thin and lost in the empty air. Rex led them towards Central Supply, the wing that held medications, equipment, anything a hospital needed to function. Sterling swore under her breath, her hand moving to the weapon concealed beneath her jacket. That wing was cleared 20 minutes ago, she said. Kira shook her head. Cleared isn't clean. They reached the door. Rex stopped again, sitting hard, the alert unmistakable. His tail went perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the door like it held answers to questions only he understood. Blackwood swallowed. He's saying it's here. Security cracked the door, moving with the careful precision of people who'd seen what bombs could do. The smell hit first. Faint, metallic, fundamentally wrong in a way that made something primal in the human brain want to run. A broken crate lay open on the floor. Inside, foam padding torn apart. Empty spaces where vials should have been. The kind of vials that required hazmat suits and specialized storage. The kind that shouldn't exist in a civilian hospital. Kira crouched, eyes scanning the damage with the focus of someone reading a crime scene. They didn't want it all released, she said. They wanted a signal. Sterling's voice dropped. Who? Kira stood slowly. Someone who knows I'm here. Blackwood stared at her. How would anyone know you're here? You've been underground for 3 years. Kira looked at Rex. Because the moment he alerted on me, the moment federal systems lit up, someone somewhere got a notification. Someone who's been waiting. Someone who thought I was dead. Sterling pulled her phone fingers, moving rapidly across the screen. We've got a breach at the ambulance bay, she said, reading incoming messages. Unauthorized vehicle. Two individuals attempting to load equipment. Kira was already moving. They reached the bay as headlights flared against concrete. An unmarked panel van idled near the loading dock, back doors gaping open like a mouth. Two figures froze when they saw Kira, the kind of freeze that comes from recognition, not surprise. Not amateurs, Kira said quietly. They expected extraction, not resistance. Sterling raised her weapon, voice sharp and commanding. Federal agents, stand down. Hands where I can see them. One of the figures bolted, disappearing into the darkness beyond the parking lot with the speed of someone who'd practiced escape routes. But the second man didn't run. He raised his hands slowly, deliberately, eyes never leaving Kira's face. Mid-30s, athletic build, military bearing that no civilian clothes could hide. Scars visible on his forearms, the kind you get from shrapnel, not accidents. You're supposed to be dead, he said. Kira felt something cold settle behind her sternum. So are you. Recognition flickered across his face, sharp, painful. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. You remember, I remember everything, Kira replied. That's the problem. Sirens approached from multiple directions. Too late to matter now, but coming anyway. The convergence of federal response, local police, hospital security, all the machinery of law enforcement grinding into motion. Sterling's partner moved in to cuff the man, but his smile never faded. You think this ends with me? Kira leaned closer, voice dropping. I think this started long before tonight. The man laughed, once sharp and bitter. They told us you were KIA. Graves himself confirmed it. Said you went over the cliff and never came back up. Kira's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Commander Graves should know better than to trust what he can't verify. The man's smile slipped. He's going to want to see you. I'm counting on it, Kira said. Sterling pulled Kira aside as other agents secured the suspect and began processing the scene. We need you contained, she said. Debriefed. This hospital is compromised. There could be more agents, more devices. Kira's gaze drifted back toward ICU, where patients lay dying from exposure they didn't understand. People are still in danger. We can move them. Evacuate the building. You won't, Kira said flatly. You'll shut it down. Write reports. Calculate acceptable losses. I've seen how this works. Sterling's jaw tightened. You don't get to dictate terms here. Kira looked at Rex, who sat between them, immovable. Loyal to something beyond commands. I already am. Blackwood cleared his throat. Ma'am, Kira, if this compound is spreading, if there's more of it, it's not spreading. Kira interrupted. It's being guided. Another alarm cut through the bay. Higher pitch. More urgent. A nurse's voice over the intercom cracked with barely controlled panic. I see you, bed 7 is coding. We need a doctor now. Kira was already moving, pushing past Sterling, past security, past the perimeter that was supposed to contain her. Rex followed without hesitation, Blackwood close behind, torn between stopping her and trusting that his dog knew something he didn't. Inside the ICU room, the patient's skin had gone ash gray. Breath shallow and irregular. Eyes unfocused. Early 20s, Kira noted. Male. Military tattoo visible on his forearm, the kind that marked him as special operations. They're escalating, she said. The attending physician, a man in his 50s with 30 years of emergency medicine behind him, looked at her with eyes that had stopped questioning anything in the last hour. Tell us what to do, Kira snapped on gloves. You isolate, you don't touch without barriers, full hazmat protocol, and you pray they don't push the dose again. The monitor flatlined. That sound, that means death is winning. Kira didn't hesitate. She started compressions. Rhythm perfect. 100 beats per minute exactly. Voice steady as she called orders that the staff followed without question because competence has its own authority. Switch oxygen delivery. Increase flow. I need atropine. Now. Rex lay at the foot of the bed, eyes locked on the door, not watching the patient, watching for threats. The line flickered, then steadied. The patient gasped, air tearing back into lungs that had almost surrendered. Kira stepped back, chest tight, sweat cooling on her spine. The room erupted into motion, staff moving with renewed purpose, but she barely registered it. Sterling stood in the doorway, phone pressed to her ear. They just activated a retrieval protocol, she said quietly. For you, Kira laughed once. Short, humorless. They don't get to retrieve what they abandoned. Sterling hesitated. If you don't come voluntarily, they'll send someone else. They always do, Kira finished. Rex stood, hackles raised, staring down the hall. The low rumble in his chest was warning. Primal. The kind that said danger was coming, whether anyone was ready or not. Footsteps echoed. Heavy, deliberate, multiple individuals moving with tactical precision. Kira felt it before she saw them. The old pressure, the sense of being bracketed by something inevitable. She'd felt it before 3 years ago, right before her world exploded. A man stepped into view at the end of the hall, tall, composed, eyes too calm for someone walking into a federal incident. He wore scrubs like everyone else, but his posture gave him away instantly. Military bearing, command presence, the kind you can't fake. Kira, he said gently, it's been a long time. Her pulse slowed. Not long enough, Sterling whispered urgently. Who is that? Kira didn't take her eyes off him. Someone who should have stayed buried. The man smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. We need to talk, Rex growled low. Sustained, warning, Kira shifted her stance, placing herself between the man and the ICU door, between him and the patients who couldn't defend themselves. You're not taking anyone else tonight. The man's gaze flicked to the dog, then back to Kira. You always did make friends easily. Security closed in from multiple directions, weapons raised, but the man didn't react. Didn't tense, didn't reach for anything. Stand down, he said calmly, speaking to no one in particular. If I wanted this loud, it would already be over. Kira felt the truth of that settle deep. Why now, she asked. Because you made noise, he replied, and because the system doesn't like loose ends. Kira nodded slowly. Then you shouldn't have let me live. The man's smile faded. We're about to fix that. Rex barked once, sharp, decisive, and every light in the ICU flickered, dimmed, and died. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in red, the color of warnings, the color of blood. Monitors switched to battery backup, beeping frantically. Ventilators clicked into emergency mode. In the sudden chaos, in the moment when everyone's eyes adjusted to darkness, the man disappeared. Not running, just gone. Like smoke dispersing. Sterling shouted into her radio, full building sweep, suspect is armed and dangerous. All units respond. But Kira knew better. He wasn't running, he was positioning. This was his building, now his battlefield. He'd just leveled the playing field by taking away the one advantage civilians had. Light. Blackwood moved beside her, yip and drawn. Rex pressed against his leg. What just happened? We just entered his world, Kira said, and he's very good at operating in the dark. The hospital transformed. What had been a place of healing became a maze. Corridors stretched into shadow. Rooms became hiding places. Every corner held potential threats. The red emergency lights created pools of visibility separated by stretches of darkness where anything could wait. Sterling coordinated response teams, but Kira could see the problem. These were federal agents, not soldiers. They'd trained for arrest, not combat. They moved like law enforcement because that's what they were. The man hunting them had trained for war. We need to evacuate, Sterling said. Get everyone out before this gets worse. Kira shook her head. You evacuate, people die. He's counting on chaos, on panic, on everyone running in different directions. Then what do you suggest? Kira looked at Rex, at Blackwood, at the ICU full of patients who couldn't be moved safely. We make this building smaller. We control the space. And we use what we have, which is what Sterling demanded. Me, Kira said, I'm what he came for, so let's give him a target he can't ignore. Sterling stared at her. You want to use yourself as bait. I want to draw him into a space where his advantages don't matter. Kira corrected, where we set the terms. It was Blackwood who spoke next, his voice quiet but certain. Where Kira closed her eyes, visualizing the hospital layout. 3 years of night shifts. 3 years of walking these halls. She knew every supply closet, every stairwell, every place where corridors narrowed and rooms became choke points. The old surgical wing, she said. East side. Been closed for renovations for 6 months. No patients, no civilians, just empty rooms and long sight lines. And us, Sterling added, and us, Kira confirmed. Rex whined softly, not fear, anticipation. They moved through the hospital like ghosts themselves. Kira led Rex beside her, Blackwood and Sterling flanking. Other agents followed at a distance, setting up perimeters, controlling access points. The old surgical wing felt abandoned, dust-covered equipment. Plastic sheeting hung from ceiling tiles. The smell of paint and drywall compound mixed with the antiseptic scent that never quite left hospital spaces. Kira positioned them carefully. Not a last stand, a trap. He'll come from high ground, she said. That's his training, upper level looking down, controlling sightlines. How do you know his training? Sterling asked. Because it's my training too, Kira replied. He taught me. Sterling's eyes widened. He trained you. Kira nodded. Commander Marcus Graves, my CO 3 years ago. The man who ordered my unit killed. The man who pulled the trigger himself, Jesus Blackwood breathed. He's not just trying to clean up loose ends, Kira continued. He's trying to finish what he started. And he won't stop until every witness is gone. How many witnesses are left? Sterling asked. Kira met her eyes. Before tonight, I thought I was the only one. But that man in the ambulance bay, I recognized him. Bryce Sullivan. He was on my team. If he's alive, there might be others. Sterling's phone buzzed. She glanced down, face paling. We just got facial recognition on your ambulance bay suspect. Corporal Bryce Sullivan. Listed as KIA 3 years ago. Same operation as you. They're all supposed to be dead, Kira said quietly. Everyone who saw what Graves did. Everyone who knew about the chemical weapons he stole. We were witnesses to treason, so he erased us. Why steal chemical weapons? Blackwood asked. Kira turned to look at him. Because defense contractors pay billions for weapons that don't officially exist. Because you can test them on populations no one cares about. Because war is profitable when you're selling to both sides. Sterling's expression hardened. We need to bring him in. Get him talking. Build a case. He won't talk, Kira said. He'll die first. Men like Graves don't break. They burn everything down rather than face consequences. Then we don't give him the choice, Sterling said. A sound echoed through the empty wing. Soft, deliberate, footsteps on tile. He's here, Kira whispered. Rex's body tensed, every muscle coiled. Ready. The footsteps stopped. Then Graves' voice drifted through the darkness, came and almost friendly. Still using dogs, Kira. I remember when you couldn't stand them. Said they made you nervous. Kira didn't respond. Let him talk. Let him think he was in control. You've done well, Graves continued. 3 years underground, new identity, quiet life. I almost didn't believe it when the system flagged you. Thought it was a glitch. But here you are. Silence. You know I have to finish this, he said. Nothing personal. Just operational necessity. You understand. Kira's hand moved to her pocket, fingers closing around something small. A syringe. Sedative? Not much of a weapon, but she'd worked with less. How many others, she called out. How many of my team survived? Graves laughed. You'll find out soon enough. Some are with me now. Some are resistant, like you. So you're recruiting, Kira said. Building a new team. Building an empire, Graves corrected. The compound we developed, it's worth $8 billion on the black market. Makes soldiers fearless, unkillable. Every military on Earth wants it. And I'm the only one who knows how to manufacture it. You're testing it here, Kira said. On civilians. On expendables, Graves replied. Homeless, addicts, veterans the VA forgot about, people who won't be missed. Science requires sacrifice. You're insane, Sterling said. I'm practical. Graves shot back. And I'm done talking. The attack came from 3 directions simultaneously. Not just Graves. He'd brought backup. Figures moved in the shadows, professional and silent. Former special operations Kira recognized immediately. People who knew exactly what they were doing. Rex lunged teeth, finding flesh. Someone screamed. Sterling fired twice, muzzle flash, blinding in the darkness. Blackwood moved to cover weapon tracking threats. And Kira did what she'd been trained to do. What she'd spent 3 years trying to forget. She fought. Not like a nurse, like a SEAL. Fast, efficient, brutal. The first attacker came at her with a knife. She deflected, trapped his arm, drove her elbow into his throat. He dropped. The second was smarter, keeping distance, but she closed it faster than he expected. Swept his leg, followed him down. Pressure point on the neck. Unconsciousness in seconds. Sterling was holding her own tactical training, keeping her alive. Blackwood had pinned one attacker, Rex guarding him. But Graves was gone. Kira scanned the darkness, heart rate elevated but controlled. He wouldn't flee. Fleeing wasn't his style. He was hunting. The realization came too late. Sterling cried out, stumbling backward. Graves materialized behind her arm around her throat, using her as a shield. Drop it, he said calmly, or she dies. Kira froze. Rex growled. Smart dog, Graves said, but not smart enough. He shifted position and Kira saw it. The injector in his hand, pressed against Sterling's neck. The same compound that had been used on the ICU patients. Kira lowered her weapon slowly. Okay, she said. You win. Graves smiled. I always do. That's when the lights came back on. Full power, blinding after the darkness. Everyone squinted, disoriented. And in that moment of distraction, Kira moved. She threw the syringe. Not at Graves, at his hand, the one holding the injector. It struck, true embedding in the webbing between thumb and forefinger. Graves jerked grip, loosening just enough. Sterling dropped, rolled clear. Rex launched forward. Blackwood fired once. The bullet struck Graves' shoulder, spinning him around. Kira was already there, closing the distance. They went down together, grappling in a tangle of trained violence. He was stronger, more experienced. But she was younger, faster, and she was fighting for more than just survival. She was fighting for every person he'd killed, every life he'd destroyed, every witness he'd erased. The injector skittered across the floor. Rex grabbed it in his teeth, backing away. Graves punched her twice hard enough to crack ribs. She kneed him in return, targeting old injuries she remembered from training. He gasped, grip weakening. Sterling recovered her weapon. "Federal agent, don't move." Graves laughed, blood on his teeth. "You think this ends here? I have people everywhere. Senators, generals. You can't touch me." Kira leaned close, voice dropping to a whisper only he could hear. "Watch me." She drove her fist into his solar plexus. Once, twice, until he couldn't breathe, couldn't fight, could only lie there defeated. Security flooded the wing. Federal agents, hospital security, police. The machinery of justice, slow but inevitable. As they pulled Graves to his feet, cuffing him, reading rights he probably didn't care about. He looked at Kira one last time. "This isn't over," he said. Kira wiped blood from her lip. "Yes, it is." Sterling approached, nursing a bruised throat. "You okay?" Kira nodded. "I've had worse," Sterling said. Then quieter. "Thank you." Kira looked at Rex, at Blackwood, at the agent securing the scene. "Don't thank me yet. He said there are others. More of my team, some working with him. We need to find them before they disappear again." Sterling pulled out her phone. "I'll make some calls, get resources allocated. But Kira, you're going to have to come in. Official debriefing, the whole thing." Kira was silent for a long moment. Then she looked toward the ICU. "After I make sure my patients are stable." Sterling almost smiled. "You're still a nurse." "I'm still a lot of things," Kira said. "But yeah, still a nurse." Dawn broke over Boston with the kind of light that made everything look fragile. Pale gold spilling across rooftops, painting the city in shades of hope and exhaustion. Inside St. Catherine Hospital, the night had been endless, but morning came anyway, indifferent to the chaos left in its wake. Kira stood at the ICU nurse's station, finishing the last of her charting. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, despite the bruises blooming across her knuckles, despite the cut above her eyebrow that a resident had butterfly bandaged an hour ago. Rex lay at her feet, finally sleeping, his body pressed against her leg, even in rest. The patients were stable, all 7 who'd been exposed, 2 still critical but improving. The compound's effects were reversible if caught early enough, if treated aggressively. Kira had spent the last 4 hours ensuring every protocol was followed, every medication timed perfectly, every vitals check documented. She was a nurse. That's what she kept telling herself. Even when federal agents stood guard outside each room, even when Sterling's people processed the scene like a crime investigation instead of a medical emergency, even when Blackwood watched her with questions in his eyes he didn't know how to ask. "Doctor." Elaine Hartford approached slowly, a cup of coffee in each hand. She offered one to Kira without a word. They'd worked together through the night, saving lives, and somewhere in those dark hours had formed the kind of bond that emergency medicine creates between people. "You should go home," Hartford said quietly. Kira took the coffee. "I don't have a home." Hartford blinked. What Kira realized what she'd said. "Corrected course. I meant I have a shift report to finish." "You've been here 19 hours, Hartford said. "You've been shot at, fought federal suspects, and saved more lives tonight than most nurses do in a month. Go home. Sleep. The hospital will still be here tomorrow." Kira almost laughed. "Will it?" Hartford didn't answer that. Instead, she asked the question Kira knew was coming. "Who are you, really?" Kira looked at her, really looked. Hartford was 33, unmarried, lived for her work, came in on her days off to check on patients. She cared. That mattered more than credentials. "I'm someone who made mistakes a long time ago," Kira said, "and I've been trying to make up for them ever since. By becoming a nurse, by saving the lives I couldn't save before." Hartford absorbed that, then nodded slowly, accepting what she could and letting go of what she couldn't. "That's enough for me." Sterling appeared at the end of the hallway, phone pressed to her ear, exhaustion written across her face in lines that hadn't been there 12 hours ago. She ended the call and walked toward them with the heaviness of someone carrying news that would change everything. "We found another one," she said without preamble. "Another survivor from your unit." Kira went very still. "Who?" "Lieutenant Cole Ashford, your brother." The coffee cup slipped from Kira's hand. Hartford caught it before it hit the floor, her reflexes sharp from years of emergency medicine. But she couldn't catch the expression that crossed Kira's face, the pure shock of impossible hope. That's not possible, Kira breathed. Cole was 22 feet from the explosion. I saw him go down. He survived, Sterling said. Barely. Spent 18 months in a military hospital under a different name. When he was strong enough, he went underground. Started investigating graves on his own. Where is he? Kira demanded. Here, a voice said from behind Sterling. A man stepped into view. Early 30s, lean build. Military bearings softened by civilian clothes that didn't quite fit right. He had Kira's eyes. Same pale blue, same intensity. For a moment, neither of them moved. 3 years of thinking the other was dead creates a distance that takes time to cross. Then Cole smiled. The same crooked smile Kira remembered from childhood, from holidays, from the last time she'd seen him before everything went to hell. Hey sis, he said. Kira crossed the space between them in 3 strides and hit him. Not hard, just enough to make the point. You bastard, you let me think you were dead. Cole absorbed the hit without flinching. You were supposed to think that. Graves was hunting survivors. I had to disappear. So did I, Kira said. I know. Cole's expression softened. I've been looking for you for 2 years. Tracked every lead, every rumor. Then last night, federal systems lit up like Christmas. I knew it had to be you. Rex stirred, padding over to sniff Cole with professional skepticism. Cole held out his hand, letting the dog assess him, waiting for approval he hadn't earned yet. He's with me, Kira said softly. Rex sat but kept watching. Trust but verify. Sterling cleared her throat. This is touching, but we have a situation. Graves is in custody, but he's not talking. And we've identified 3 more members of your old unit, all alive, all unaccounted for. Kira forced her attention back to the mission. Who's Sergeant Cade Morrison, demolitions expert, last seen in Nevada 2 months ago? Corporal Sienna Drake, field medic, dropped off grid in Colorado 3 weeks ago, and Corporal Bryce Sullivan, who you already met in the ambulance bay. We have Sullivan in custody? Sterling continued. He's been cooperative. Says Graves recruited him 6 months ago. Promised him purpose money, a way to use his skills. Sullivan claims he didn't know about the human testing until it was too late. Do you believe him, Kira asked. Sterling hesitated. I believe he's scared. Whether that makes him innocent is another question. I want to talk to him, Kira said. Sterling shook her head. You're a witness, not an investigator. I'm the only person who knows what questions to ask, Kira countered. I served with Sullivan for 18 months. I know how he thinks. Cole stepped forward. We both do. Let us help. Sterling looked between them, calculating. Finally, she nodded. 10 minutes, supervised, and if this goes sideways, you're both out. The interrogation room was exactly what Kira expected. Gray walls, metal table, chairs bolted to the floor. One-way mirror that fooled no one. Bryce Sullivan sat on the far side, hands cuffed, shoulders slumped. He'd aged in 3 years. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Gray in his hair that spoke of stress, not time. He looked up when Kira entered. Something flickered across his face, relief, guilt, fear, all of it. Ghost, he said. That's what we called you, right? Because you could move through hostile territory like you weren't even there. Kira sat across from him. Cole remained standing, positioned near the door, reading Sullivan's body language with the expertise of someone trained in interrogation. You were at the ambush, Kira said. You were there when Graves turned on us. Sullivan nodded. I saw it happen, saw him give the order, saw the team go down. He met her eyes. I thought you were dead too. We all did. But you survived. Sullivan's laugh was bitter. Survived, that's one word for it. I took shrapnel in 3 places, crawled 2 miles through enemy territory, got picked up by a patrol that wasn't supposed to be there, spent a year in recovery and another year trying to figure out what to do with the rest of my life. So you joined Graves, Cole said flatly. Sullivan flinched. He found me, offered me work, said we could finish what we started, said the compound we discovered could save soldiers' lives, make them better, stronger. I believed him. Until Kira prompted. Until I saw what he was really doing, Sullivan said. Testing it on civilians. Killing people to perfect the formula. Selling it to the highest bidder. By then I was in too deep. He had leverage. Knew things about me. Things I'd done. What things? Sterling's voice came through a speaker, sharp and demanding. Sullivan was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at Kira. You remember Kandahar? The village. Kira went very still. Don't. Cole looked between them. What happened in Kandahar? Sullivan continued as if Cole hadn't spoken. We were extracting a high-value target, Intel said he was alone, but he wasn't. There were civilians, women, children. Kira's voice was ice. That's classified. Graves gave the order to eliminate witnesses, Sullivan said. Most of the team refused. But some of us, he stopped. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Some of us followed orders. The room went silent, the weight of confession pressing down on everyone. How many, Sterling asked. Sullivan closed his eyes. 12. All dead. All buried in a report that said they were combatants. Jesus, Cole breathed. Kira stood abruptly. The chair scraped against concrete. She walked to the corner of the room, hands clenched into fists, breathing hard. That's why Graves has power over you, Sterling said. He knows what you did. Sullivan nodded. He said if I helped him, the secret stayed buried. If I didn't, he'd make sure the world knew. My family would know. My kids. You have kids, Kira asked without turning around. 2, Sullivan said quietly. 7 and 9. They think their dad is a hero. Kira turned back to face him. You want redemption? Sullivan met her eyes. More than anything. Then give us everything, Kira said. Every location, every contact, every piece of the network Graves built. You help us take it apart. Maybe you get to keep being a hero to those kids. Sullivan nodded slowly. I can give you Morrison. He's running logistics from a warehouse in Nevada. Coordinates, shipments, handles distribution. And Drake, Cole asked. Sullivan hesitated. Drake is different. She's not working with Graves. She's hunting him. That stopped everyone. Explain it, Sterling demanded. Drake found out what Graves did, Sullivan said. Found proof. She's been building a case for 2 years. Evidence. Witnesses. Documentation. She's the reason I agreed to talk. She convinced me we could bring him down if we worked together. Where is she, Kira asked. I don't know, Sullivan admitted. She moves every few days. Never stays in one place. Last I heard, she was in Boston, close to Graves, watching him. She's been here the whole time. Sterling sounded incredulous. Probably, Sullivan said. Drake was always the best at surveillance. If she didn't want to be found, you wouldn't find her. Kira looked at Cole. We need to find her before Graves' people do. Cole nodded. If she has evidence, real evidence, we can make this stick. Graves won't walk away. Sterling was already on her phone issuing orders. I want every surveillance feed in Boston reviewed. Every hotel, every rental property. Find me Sienna Drake. The search took 6 hours. 6 hours of reviewing footage, cross-referencing data, following digital breadcrumbs that Drake had left intentionally for people smart enough to find them. Cole worked with Sterling's team, his intelligence background, making him invaluable. Kira stayed at the hospital, checking on patients, maintaining the fiction that she was just a nurse caught in extraordinary circumstances. But she wasn't just waiting, she was thinking. Drake had been in Boston for weeks, maybe months, watching Graves, close enough to gather evidence, but careful enough not to be detected. That required resources, support, a base of operations. Kira pulled up hospital employment records on a terminal using credentials Hartford had given her with a knowing look and no questions asked. She searched for new hires in the last 3 months. Maintenance staff, cleaning crew, food service, anyone who could move through the building without attracting attention. There, Sienna Reeves, hired 2 months ago, night shift custodial, background check clean but sparse. Photo showed a woman in her mid-30s with dark hair and unremarkable features. But Kira recognized the eyes, pale green, sharp, intelligent. She called Sterling. I found her, where Sterling demanded. She's been working here, Kira said. As a janitor, she's been inside the whole time watching Graves gathering evidence. Sterling swore. We evacuated all non-essential personnel during the lockdown. She could be anywhere now. No, Kira said. She's still here. She wouldn't leave without finishing what she started. Kira moved through the hospital with Rex at her side, Blackwood following at a discreet distance. She went to places Drake would go. Maintenance corridors, storage areas, the old surgical wing where renovations provided cover and privacy. She found Drake in the sub-basement in a storage room that had been converted into a makeshift command center. Laptops, external drives, stacks of documents. Photographs pinned to walls showing Graves meeting with various individuals, exchanging briefcases, coordinating operations. Drake looked up when Kira entered. She was smaller than Kira remembered, wiry and compact with the kind of stillness that came from years of staying invisible. She didn't reach for a weapon, didn't run, just watched Kira with those sharp green eyes. Ghost, she said. I wondered when you'd find me. You've been busy, Kira observed, looking at the evidence spread across the room. 3 years of work, Drake confirmed. Every transaction, every meeting, every crime. I have enough to put Graves away for life, and about 40 other people with him. Why didn't you come forward, Kira asked. Because I needed leverage, Drake said. Graves has people everywhere. In the FBI, the Pentagon, Congress. If I went public too soon, they'd bury me and the evidence. I needed to wait for the right moment. And that moment is now. Drake smiled. You came back from the dead. Graves got arrested. The federal government is actually paying attention. Yeah, I'd say the moment is now. Cole entered the room, Sterling right behind him. They took in the evidence with widening eyes. This is incredible, Sterling breathed. This is airtight. Drake nodded. I've been documenting everything. Financial records showing $8 billion in illegal weapons sales. Communications between Graves and foreign governments. Test results from human subjects. All of it traceable, all of it admissible. How many people are implicated? Cole asked. 47, Drake said, including 3 senators, 2 generals, and a dozen defense contractors. This goes all the way to the top. Sterling pulled out her phone. I need to make some calls. This is bigger than Boston field office. This is task force level. While Sterling coordinated federal response, Kira approached Drake. Why didn't you contact me? Drake met her eyes. I thought you were dead. We all did. And honestly, if I'd known you were alive, I would have left you alone. You got out. You had a new life. Why drag you back into this? Because it's not finished, Kira said. Not until everyone knows the truth. Drake nodded slowly. Then let's finish it. The next 72 hours were a blur of federal activity. Arrests coordinated across multiple states. Search warrants executed simultaneously to prevent evidence destruction. Press conferences announcing the largest military corruption scandal in decades. Graves was formally charged with 47 counts, including murder, treason, weapons trafficking, and crimes against humanity. His defense attorneys filed motions that were immediately denied. The evidence was overwhelming. The case was airtight. Sullivan entered witness protection with his family testimony, secured in exchange for reduced charges. He'd spend time in prison, but not life. His kids would still have a father, even if that father had to live with what he'd done. Morrison was arrested at his Nevada warehouse, surrounded by enough chemical weapons to supply a small army. He'd face trial separately, but the outcome was inevitable. Drake's evidence became the foundation of a task force that would spend years untangling the network Graves had built. Careers would end. Reputations would be destroyed. The system would be shaken to its core. And Kira went back to work. 6 weeks after the night that changed everything, she stood in front of a classroom at St. Catherine Hospital. The room was full of young nurses, medical students, and paramedics, all of them eager to learn. All of them looking at her with a respect she hadn't asked for but had earned. The sign on the door read Ashford Combat Medicine Institute. Her real name. No more hiding, no more lies. Director Kira Ashford stood at the front of the room, Rex lying quietly at her feet. She'd been officially reinstated to the Navy with full honors, though she'd chosen to remain on inactive status. The Navy Cross they'd awarded her sat in a drawer at home next to her original dog tags, recognition she'd never expected and didn't quite know what to do with. Combat medicine isn't just about saving lives under fire, she told her students. It's about making impossible choices when everything is chaos, when the textbook doesn't have an answer, when you have to trust your training and your instincts and hope to God you're right. A young nursing student raised her hand. How do you handle the fear? Kira smiled. You don't eliminate fear. You use it. Fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alert. The moment you stop being afraid is the moment you make mistakes. Another student asked, is it true you were a Navy SEAL? Kira nodded. I was. For 6 years. I saw things I wish I hadn't. Did things I'm not proud of. Lost people I cared about. But I also learned how to stay calm when everyone else panics. How to prioritize when every second counts. How to save lives when the odds say they're already gone. She paused, looking around the room at faces young and eager and unburdened by the weight she carried. I'm not here to make you into soldiers, she continued. I'm here to teach you how to think like one when it matters. How to assess, decide, and act. How to be the person everyone else needs when the world falls apart. The class ended 90 minutes later. Students filed out, chattering excitedly, already debating techniques and asking questions of each other, building the foundation that would make them better at their jobs, better at saving lives. Hartford waited outside, leaning against the wall. Good class, Kira nodded. They're eager, that's half the battle. The other half, Hartford asked. Keeping them that way when they see their first real trauma, Kira said. When theory becomes reality and they realize how hard this actually is. You'll prepare them, Hartford said with certainty. You're good at this, Kira almost argued. Almost said she was just doing what needed to be done, that anyone could teach these skills, that she wasn't special. But she was learning to accept compliments without deflecting. Learning that sometimes being good at something was enough. Cole appeared at the end of the hallway walking with Blackwood and Sterling. The three of them had formed an unlikely alliance over the past weeks, working together to close out the investigation, tie up loose ends, ensure nothing fell through the cracks. Family dinner tonight, Cole called out. My place, 7 p.m. Kira smiled. I'll be there. It had become a weekly tradition. The survivors gathering to share a meal, to remember those who hadn't made it, to celebrate the simple fact of being alive. Sullivan joined via video call from his new location, his kids occasionally appearing on screen to say hello. Drake came when her schedule allowed, though she was rarely in one place long enough for regular attendance. Morrison would never join. He'd made his choices and would live with the consequences. But the rest of them, the ones who'd survived and chosen redemption over revenge, they gathered. They talked. They healed. That evening, Kira stood on Cole's balcony looking out over the city. Boston at sunset, all gold and shadow. Rex lay at her feet, content and drowsy from a day of work. Cole joined her, 2 beers in hand. He offered one silently. They drank in comfortable silence for a while. Brothers and sisters who'd been through hell and come out the other side. You think it's really over? Cole asked eventually. Kira considered that. Graves is in prison for life. His network is dismantled. The people he hurt are getting justice. She paused. But there will always be another Graves. Another person willing to sacrifice others for profit. So no, it's not over. It's never over. That's depressing, Cole observed. Kira shook her head. It's realistic. But it also means there's always work to do, always lives to save, always a mission. And you're okay with that. Being on a mission for the rest of your life, Kira looked at him. I spent 3 years pretending to be someone else, hiding, running. It was safe, but it wasn't living. Now I'm teaching, training, building something that lasts after I'm gone. She smiled. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Inside, laughter erupted. Drake had arrived and was telling some story that had everyone in stitches. Sterling was arguing good-naturedly with Blackwood about proper canine handling techniques. The smell of dinner cooking filled the apartment. Normal. Almost. Come on, Cole said. Food's ready. They went inside, joining the others, becoming part of the warmth and noise and life. Rex followed, accepting treats from Drake, tolerating belly rubs from Sterling, maintaining his dignity even as he clearly enjoyed the attention. Kira sat at the table surrounded by people who understood, who'd seen the same darkness, who carried the same scars. And she realized something. She wasn't hiding anymore, wasn't running, wasn't pretending to be someone she wasn't. She was Kira Ashford, combat medic, teacher, survivor. And for the first time in 3 years, that was enough. Later that night, back in her small apartment, Kira sat at her desk. She pulled out a notebook, old and worn, filled with names. Every person she'd saved over the years. Every life that had made the struggle worth it. She added 7 more names, the patients from that night at St. Catherine's. The ones who'd survived because she'd been there, because she'd known what to look for, because she'd refused to let them become statistics. 7 more lives, 7 more reasons. She closed the notebook and looked at Rex, who watched her with patient eyes. Tomorrow she'd teach another class, train another group of students, pass on skills that might save lives years from now in situations she'd never know about. Tomorrow the mission continued, but tonight she allowed herself to rest, to feel the weight lift just a little, to believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd done enough. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. She almost deleted it, almost ignored it, but something made her open it. The message was simple, 3 words and a photo. Thank you, Ghost. The photo showed a young soldier, healthy and smiling, standing with his family. Private Ethan Ward, the 19-year-old she'd saved that first night, the one who'd been exposed to Graves' compound. He'd recovered fully, been discharged honorably, and gone home. One more life, one more reason. Kira saved the photo, added Ward's name to her notebook. Then she turned off the lights, Rex curling up at the foot of her bed, and let herself sleep. No nightmares that night. No ghosts except the ones she'd chosen to carry. Just peace. And the knowledge that tomorrow she'd wake up and do it all over again. Because that's what survivors do. They keep going. They keep fighting. They keep saving lives. One patient at a time, one student at a time, one day at a time, until the mission is complete. And for people like Kira Ashford, the mission never truly ends. It just evolves.